And for this week's Tuesday Night War, AEW Dynamite and WWE NXT delivered packed shows in the battle for brand supremacy, and now the numbers are in. Bodyslam.net reports that the backstage atmosphere at NXT was a bit chaotic, with things moving around frequently, but that the Gold brand was able to figure out how to emerge the victors. Sports TV Ratings has learned that NXT won by a considerable margin, scoring 921,000 viewers to AEW Dynamite's 609,000, as fans wanted to see the blockbuster show of the Gold brand. To put it in perspective, NXT saw its third highest viewership since coming to the USA Network in 2019, while Dynamite experienced its lowest viewership since the October 23, 2021 Dynamite. Of course, the amount of star power on this week's NXT isn't sustainable, and only compelling storylines will decide the viewership of both shows going forward. On Twitter, Tony Khan didn't address his defeat directly, but instead thanked everyone who watched the show, saying AEW has come a long way from being a startup in a parking lot. No matter how Khan slices it, NXT were the victors of the Tuesday Night War, and we'll have to see what comes next for both shows after this one-night battle for viewers. In the hours preceding the Tuesday Night War, Tony Khan took aim at Triple H, Shawn Michaels, and Vince McMahon, and these shots didn't stop even after Dynamite and NXT stopped airing. Unsurprisingly, many fans took issue with Khan's comments, saying he should focus more on AEW and less on WWE, and now the AEW president has fired back. When a fan stated that Vince McMahon has the power and influence to take cheap shots, adding that Khan is the knockoff brand version, Khan said that Vince has allegedly used his power and influence to shoot a lot of shots. Khan is, of course, referring to the allegations of sexual misconduct towards McMahon that led to his temporary retirement in 2022, allegations Khan brought up prior to this week's Dynamite. As to whether it's right for Khan to reference alleged sexual harassment of women in the effort to win a ratings war with NXT, that'll probably differ from fan to fan, but it wasn't just McMahon Khan had an issue with. When a fan shared an AI-generated image of NXT's Shawn Michaels winning Booker of the Year, Khan responded, saying he's sure this week's war blew whatever chance HBK had of winning that award. Khan is certainly talking a big game for somebody who lost the war for viewers by a considerable margin, as the AEW president is confident he'll be the one known as Booker of the Year. Who would you pick as the Booker of the Year, though? And what do you make of Khan's comments about HBK and McMahon? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. In a matter of weeks, WWE will return to Riyadh for their Crown Jewel event, and there's been questions about whether John Cena will be competing in Saudi Arabia. Cena recently stated that with the SAG-AFTRA strike ending, he will soon be returning to Hollywood, but fans will get to see him one last time in the ring before he returns to Tinseltown. Ringside News has learned that despite the planned return to Hollywood, Cena is booked for Crown Jewel on November 4th in what'll be his first Saudi show in over 5 years. Cena competed at the Greatest Royal Rumble in April 2018, but opted not to compete at subsequent events due to the nation's many controversies, but that streak will be broken next month. The Writers Guild was able to figure out an end to the strike, while the Screen Actors Guild is still working on their deal, but expect Cena to step between the ropes one more time next month. WWE often uses its biggest stars at their events in Saudi Arabia, and Brock Lesnar has competed at these events several times, but Crown Jewel 2023 will not feature the Beast. Ringside News was told that Lesnar isn't booked for Crown Jewel, and it remains to be seen when the former Universal Champion will appear next. This week's war also took place on Tony Khan's 41st birthday, and while losing to NXT was hardly an ideal present, the AEW president had fun after the show. Dynamite went off the air with Adam Copeland and Bryan Danielson standing tall after a mass brawl, and PW Insider reports that after the show, the two celebrated while Copeland's theme played. Christian Cage was dragged out of the ring by Wheeler Yuta and Claudio Castagnoli, and the Blackpool Combat Club shook hands with the Rated R superstar. Up next was a birthday celebration for Tony Khan, as the crowd and the roster sang to the AEW boss, who was also presented with a cake. Once the post-Dynamite taping of AEW Rampage had finished, Tony Khan appeared again and celebrated his birthday with a crab dance, and was joined by Wheeler Yuta and Claudio Castagnoli. Khan told those in attendance that it was his best birthday he'd ever had, as the AEW president was in a great mood during what was an intense night for his company. It was on last week's Collision that Big Bill and Ricky Starks squashed FTR to win the AEW World Tag Team Championships, a huge upset considering how FTR are considered one of the best tag teams today. With this one-sided match, it was reported shortly after that the result was due to Cash Wheeler being injured and AEW wanting the titles off of FTR, but that isn't the case. In an update on Wrestling Observer Radio, it was stated that Wheeler isn't hurt and that he and Dax Harwood will be back in time and they're going to be back in the mix. So if Cash Wheeler isn't hurt, what was the reasoning for last week's title change? Well, Sean Ross Sapp reports that it was actually Dax Harwood who pushed for the finish of the match. As for why Harwood pushed for the match to end with Big Bill and Ricky Starks standing tall, we don't know, nor is it known for how long FTR will be kept off of TV. The good news is that Wheeler isn't injured despite selling his ribs on Collision, so fans won't have to wait for him to be healed before we see FTR again. For last year's Survivor Series, WWE brought War Games to the main roster, and the iconic Double Cage will be returning for next month's event. Fightful Select reports that WWE are expected to hold War Games again at Survivor Series, but that unlike last year, which saw men's and women's matches, only a men's match is being discussed at this time. The Judgment Day faction are being mentioned as a possible team to be included, but there's no word on who'd be facing off against Finn Balor, Damian Priest, Dominic Mysterio, and JD McDonough. It should be stressed that no plans have been confirmed at this point, but don't be surprised if the Double Cage returns at next month's Premium Live event. In the days leading up to Fastlane, it appeared that AJ Styles would be teaming with John Cena at the event until the Phenomenal One was laid out by the Bloodline. Styles would be replaced by LA Knight, who would get the win for his team against Jimmy Uso and Solo Sikoa, but fans haven't seen Styles since the attack last month. When Ringside News asked sources in WWE, they were told that Styles is not injured and that he'll be back on TV soon. This is great news considering that Styles missed months of action due to a foot injury he suffered last December, and the last thing anyone needs is for him to be out with another injury. Styles is one of the older talents on WWE's roster but can still go in the ring, and he'll no doubt show that when he's back on TV in the near future. Back to NXT, as Paul Heyman interacted with plenty of Gold brand superstars this week, from being in the corner of Braun Breaker to being spotted talking to Ava about the Bloodline backstage. Heyman has always had a good eye for talent, just ask Paul Heyman guys like Steve Austin and Brock Lesnar, and there's somebody in NXT who has caught the eye of Roman Reigns' wise man. Speaking to Fox News Digital, Heyman said that everybody, especially the superstars, should keep an eye on Tiffany Stratton as he predicts big things for the former women's champion. He said, "Tiffany Stratton is someone that Rhea Ripley and Charlotte Flair and Bianca Belair and the main roster women better keep their eyes on because she's another one who, if she continues on this path, is going to be a significant player in the future of this industry and leading the industry into the future. I thought Tiffany Stratton not only held her own in the ring with Becky Lynch, I thought in the promos that she had with Becky Lynch, she more than held her own as well. That's no easy task for someone that hasn't been on the main roster for a long time, let alone for any time. Tiffany held her own in a very tense situation with Becky Lynch and looked great doing it. And it wasn't because Becky Lynch knew how to carry her through the segment, it was because Tiffany knew how to present herself, and she did it quite well. Very impressive." Stratton has certainly impressed in NXT, and many expect a main roster move in due time, but do you share Heyman's high expectations for her future? Let us know in the comments. Next month, WWE will host its annual Survivor Series event from Chicago, Illinois, and fans can expect a former champion to return at the show. This former champion is no stranger to high-profile matches and has become a household name thanks to their career in the ring, and no, we're not talking about CM Punk. Zero News reports that Bianca Belair will be making her return to WWE TV at the November PLE after being written off of programming during the August 18th Smackdown. Belair was written off with a backstage attack by Damage Control, who targeted the injured knee Belair had sold during her SummerSlam match earlier that month. The report added that Belair is not factored in for WWE Crown Jewel, so unless WWE brings her back on a random Smackdown, it'll be Survivor Series when fans see her next. At this time, Bullet Club Gold are in possession of the AEW World title MJF wants back, and this week, a segment played out on TV which many believe was anti-Semitic. During Title Tuesday, Juice Robinson pulled out a roll of quarters with Friedman written on them, which didn't go down well with fans, despite Robinson using a roll of quarters as a weapon in the past. This time, it was pointed out that in his youth, MJF would have quarters thrown at him by bullies who played up a hateful stereotype against Jewish people, and this segment has sparked a debate. The timing of this segment is especially questionable given the ongoing hostilities with Israel and Hamas, which has been dominating the news cycle in recent days. On Twitter, MJF addressed the segment, saying this is part of what he's faced in real life and looks forward to giving catharsis to every single person who's been bullied. MJF also said he looks forward to the conversations this starts with the hope that more people become educated on the matter and wants to bring pro wrestling into the present. MJF also had some in-character comments for Robinson, saying he's looking forward to knocking Juice's teeth down his throat and looks forward to getting back the AEW World title. MJF will have the chance to do just that at Full Gear when he defends the gold against White, and what do you think of Robinson's segment on AEW Dynamite? Yesterday we noted that AEW's Saraya has been noticeably slower than her opponents in the ring, and reports like these have led some to believe that the British star is dealing with an injury. When Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful Select provided an update, however, he confirmed that Saraya is not injured, meaning the decision for her to lose the women's title this week was solely a creative call. Fans were shocked to see Saraya lose her first title in close to a decade so soon, which led many to think she must be hurt, but thankfully this isn't the case. Now, it's safe to say that the Judgment Day has become one of WWE's most dominant groups in years, but when the faction was first introduced, fans were very skeptical. That skepticism grew when reports came out that Edge, the founder, asked to be removed from the group as he didn't like planned supernatural elements, but what was WWE's original plan? During Talk is Jericho, Adam Copeland discussed the faction he briefly led and explained why he wanted to be removed from the Judgment Day. He said, "When we were doing Judgment Day, the plan was that Balor joins and about a year later they all turn on me. Well, then I got to Hell in a Cell, and it was like, no, we're changing everything, and we're speeding up that year-long process, and he's joining tomorrow and turning tomorrow. And it was just starting to find some legs, but it was going to be swimming upstream with me in it. It really was. I started to have that realization. It's like, I don't think they're going to get where they need to get to with me in this thing. People know the real story, and that was an instance where I did try and flip everything, change it all overnight, cut my hair off, change the music, and start coming out in suits. I tried changing everything, and I realized at this stage, it's not what they want, at least for me. They wanted to be able to cheer for this guy that they didn't get to for 9 years. While the Judgment Day has a gothic presence, WWE never introduced magic, supernatural elements to the group, which has not only survived Edge's departure, but is now thriving. The group may be regulars on Raw, but there has been some tensions within the Judgment Day, and whatever's next, it won't involve AEW's Adam Copeland. Instead of being a part of the Judgment Day, Copeland made his in-ring debut for AEW on Title Tuesday, and was one of the biggest selling points of the show. As we mentioned earlier, Copeland's debut was not enough to ensure Dynamite the victory in the war for viewers, but the Canadian probably isn't too upset about this. Speaking prior to NXT and Dynamite going live, Copeland spoke to the Masked Man show about the stacked cards and questioned how fans couldn't be excited about what was to come. "Who cares? I'm only this guy. I'm only this guy. This is awesome. How can you not enjoy the fact that both shows are trying to load up and trying to put on the best show imaginable? That's all I really care about. I'll try to make sure that my part of the show is all killer, no filler. That's my only job. I'm sure both will get watched when it's all said and done with DVR and however else it gets computed, since everything with ratings is so antiquated. It's fun. I remember flipping back and forth between Nitro and Raw. That's kind of what this is. I don't see that as a bad thing at all. I think it's great. The performers themselves, there is none of this weird tribalism. Within any industry, sure, there's competition, but I'm happy for those guys and they're happy for us. When there are choices and there is another company that can push the other company, that's when you get the best stuff." Wrestling fans can often be very tribal, especially when shows go head-to-head, but as Adam Copeland would remind people, with stacked shows being presented, the real winners are the fans themselves. In December 2022, Composite Effects LLC filed a legal complaint against AEW and Luchasaurus, alleging that the mask they designed was being used for merch without their permission. A judge would later deny AEW's attempts to dismiss the lawsuit, but now a settlement has been reached between the two parties. Brandon Thurston of WrestleNomics was the first to report of the settlement, but there is no word on what assets were exchanged between the two sides, if any at all. The main issue was whether Composite's copyrighted mask and AEW's modified version were substantially similar, but this is one issue AEW doesn't have to worry about anymore. Ahead of this week's stacked NXT, John Cena was promoted heavily for the show, and it seemed every piece of WWE programming was promoting Big Match John for the Gold brand. Sure enough, Cena was on the show as fans expected, but fans probably didn't expect the former WWE World Champion to appear during Dynamite. Cena appeared in an advertisement during the Hangman Page vs. Jay White match, giving fans plenty of chance to see the man who uses the "You can't see me" catchphrase. Long before he was being heralded as the greatest of all time, Cena was the doctor of Thugonomics and won over fans with his freestyle raps. During a 2003 episode of Sunday Night Heat, Cena would be confronted by a fan who had some barbs of his own for the future world champion, but it was John who won their impromptu rap battle. On this week's NXT, Cena made his debut on the Gold brand and actually had a chance to reunite with his 2003 rap opponent 2 decades later. The fan in question was Corey Lutzow, who attended this week's NXT and even got a hug from the 16-time world champion, who was elated to reunite with Lutzow. This week's NXT was a massive show and one that fans will remember for years to come, but for Corey Lutzow, it was extra special as he reconnected with the greatest of all time. This Saturday, Logan Paul will box with Dillon Danis in Manchester, but after this fight, the Maverick is eager to get back in a WWE ring. Speaking to Sports Illustrated, Paul made it clear that he's got a hit list of people he still wants to face in WWE, and we'll have to see who's next for the talented YouTuber/wrestler. More from AEW now, as the company has seen some talent leave over the years, and now VSK, who is also known as Jeeves K, has confirmed his departure. On Twitter, VSK announced his exit, saying that Jeeves is dead, referencing his AEW moniker, and PW Insider said that his contract was not renewed, but he could be used in the future. VSK worked at AEW in the Trustbusters alongside Ari Daivari and Slim J, and his exit comes shortly after fellow Trustbuster Sonny Kiss also parted the company. Zach Clayton has also left AEW after first making an appearance in 2020, and it was in October of last year that he announced that he was under contract. Clayton's last match working for Tony Khan saw him face Dalton Castle in ROH 2.5 months ago, and all signs are pointing to Clayton signing a 1-year deal that wasn't renewed. VSK and Clayton never held any gold in AEW, nor did they have any major feuds with the promotion, and both will now have an opportunity to re-establish themselves outside of AEW. It's been less than a month since Dolph Ziggler's WWE release, and while he can't compete anywhere else right now, the show-off will be appearing at an upcoming comedy show. Ziggler will be joining his brother Ryan Nemeth for a comedy tour which will begin in Chicago on November 24th, and if Dolph signs with AEW, we may be seeing more of the brothers together on TV. At SummerSlam, Ronda Rousey lost to Shayna Baszler in the first MMA rules match, and in the weeks prior, Rousey had informed WWE that she was planning to finish wrestling. Sure enough, Rousey hasn't competed or appeared for WWE since then, and posted shortly after that she had no reason to stay, and now there's another sign that the Hot Rod is retired. On Instagram, Rousey shared some photos of her family life and included the caption, "Sorry, I can't hear you over the sound of my retirement." Do you think Rousey is truly retired from competition, or will we see her step in between the ropes at least one more time? Let us know in the comments.